What's going on, fam? L.A.R movement still moving. This is about, let me cut this mic down a little bit. The top 10 pro black hustles. Now, I'm not just going to um, just talk straight hustle. I'm going to add some things that could solve some of these problems along the way that I think are necessary. Um, First and foremost, for anybody that comes, thank you for coming. So I just finished watching Fox Souls with Ice Cube, and I watched the other show with Roland Martin earlier today, and I started thinking about, like, pro black has become something. Sorry about that. I had to mute the mic because I hit my page, because sometimes I gotta see it over the phone. So what winds up happening is there are a few things that keep happening. Oh my goodness. There are a few things that keep happening with us as black people that people don't want to acknowledge. And one of those things is, you know, we hustle ourselves financially being pro black. And what I mean by that is this crowdfunding, GoFundMe, uh, grassroots type of financing, right? And it becomes, kind of like a church collection, where at the end of the day, we're dealing with this aspect of our community where people want groups, but financially, uh, you want a group of people to funnel resources to you personally. Now, I'm not saying this about Ice Cube. Um, what I'm saying is they're pro-black people. One of the hustles in being pro-black is we need to support black people and support black business. And too many times that means put money in my pocket specifically. Not spread money around the black community, you know. So it becomes a problem, big problem. Now, one of the reasons that we could solve this problem is something that, the church has learned to do over the years, is if you're going to want crowdfunding, you're going to have to employ some of the people with the money that you got from crowdfunding. And this becomes an issue with the pro-black hustle in the sense of a lot of times people want that a windfall of, crowdfunding, but employ nobody or little to nobody or in the family type, not necessarily putting people who are qualified in positions or giving people an opportunity to grow in a position from this particular aspect of getting quote unquote money. Now, if you employ people, it'll look more honest. It'll be more interactive. You get what I'm saying? It'll be far more interactive. But playing on people's guilt the same way the church does is not a good idea, because in some aspects, it's going to be looked at as you're asking people with little to nothing, with little resources, what's happening? Edward, what's going on? You're asking people with minimum, I ain't gonna say minimum, but small amount of resources to do a lot of heavy lifting. And they're not seeing any returns on that investment. You got to give people something that to invest in that they can get a return on their investment with. You get what I'm saying? That's what we're talking about today. Mike, yeah, what's happening? So this becomes a part of the hustle. To me, it becomes a hustle, not anything proper. And then at the same time, part of this financial issue has to deal with, you know, man, Mike, thanks, fam. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, what's going on? Let me see. First and foremost, hold a minute. Thank you. And what you said on real quick. Oh, you in Duncanville? Oh shoot, dog. I'm in Houston. Not I know I think that's the Dallas area. Yeah, sovereignty should be. Yeah, that's not. We're not trying to get finances to be self-sufficient. You know. He's here with DeSoto. What's up, LC? So now we're in this situation where you know you want finances, but you can't make us. But you don't know how to make the community make a step toward being self-sufficient when you want these finances. And that becomes the ultimate problem. Why I say it's a pro-black hustle. What's up, Tony? What's up, Ryan? You know, yeah, cyber billion. I like that. I like that. Now, that's why I started with the money part, because the money part is people would consider money, doing things for money, a hustle. Pretty gangster was popping. Trenton was good. So the second part, one of the other top 10 pro-black hustle is intersectionality. You know what I'm saying? And the thing about intersectionality is we look at it from the women's, women doing women this and women that. What's up, Melvin? Oh, I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that one, Trent. Don't worry. We think of intersectionality as just women's issues, and that's because women push intersectionality, but not taking into consideration that other groups jump on intersectionality for their own political gain. We talk about ADOS, FBA, which is American Descendants of Slaves, ADOS. Foundational Black Americans is FBA. And people, we bring it out to Black people from abroad, or not from the United States, who migrate to America, like after, civil rights movement. But this also because they're, we going through this, we Black like you, and this is my country, and Pan-Africanism, because on that Black part of intersectionality, it's a hustle because in a sense, you don't see us going to other predominantly Black countries in the world and trying to use their particular struggle in their own country and latch ourselves on to their struggle in their country to say, I'm just like you. That's a hustle. Now, the same thing happens with minorities and people of color, because, minorities includes white women. That doesn't necessarily, but at the same time, people of color doesn't, right? So this intersectionality becomes a hustle because we all together, we all struggling to fight against oppression and racism and the patriarchy, right? Lack of opportunity. It's like, no, that's not being pro-Black, because these other groups have to bring their grievances to the table on their own back, not on ours. You get what I'm saying? So if Hispanics have an issue, they have to bring their historical reference into why they have an issue into the table separate of ours. Same thing with Asians, same thing with Arabs, Middle Easterners, same thing, same thing with the alphabet community, same thing with white people who, because in some ways you could put Jewish and people of color, which I don't understand that, or minority, which I don't understand that. But it's there. So intersectionality becomes a pro-black hustle because people latch on to pro-black for the minority people of color policy paperwork so they can get something specifically for themselves using minority people of color, because they can't necessarily say, this is what I've endured in this country. You get what I'm saying? And that becomes a problem. Now, the guys get on, we get on the women about this because of intersectionality, is because these women are playing both sides of the fence. They're black, then they're women, then they're intersectional with other groups because they're black and because other groups of women have women in them. And then you can also be in the alphabet community because of this. So this is not being pro-black. This is being pro double, triple, quadruple, quintuple dipping. So for us, it's a pro-black, intersectionality is a pro-black hustle. You know what I'm saying? Because it only benefits, and when we look at it, it only benefits black women specifically. It doesn't benefit black men, but deeper than that, it doesn't benefit black children. There's no benefits from intersection. Black children get no benefits from intersectionality. And what I mean by that is intersectionality doesn't help these kids at school whatsoever. It doesn't help these kids with their grades. It doesn't help these kids not get put in, have all of these issues with teachers and counselors and principals and vice principals and staff, when they're not really a problem for the school. It's just people are using race and oppression against them. So it becomes a pro-black hustle, big pro-black hustle in my opinion. So that's the second part of this, right? That's the second. What's up, Ryan, man? My bad. Yeah, it definitely divides the movements. So the third one is gender politics, because I wanted to be specific about intersectionality, but we have gender politics at play under pro-blackness. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to get into politics as in policy first, because I'm going to get into another male-female agenda later. You know what I'm saying? So what we have is the politics of, you need to vote this way because black women are going this way. But that has nothing. So that if you're pro-black, if you're pro-voting for black women in this, voting in this way, but in the men are like, that's not being pro-black, that's being pro-black woman. And the women are saying, if you vote this way, you're being pro. Say, if black men don't vote Democratic, you're selling out, because Democratic right now, is looked at as pro-black woman. But if black men vote Republican, they're selling out because they're pro-black family, not necessarily pro-black man, but that's looked at as a line in the sand. We become adversaries because of this. So, and that's, listening to the Ice Cube thing is, the more people talk, the more telling it is. And I'm not even going to say that I spoke of this a long time ago. Shout out to O'Shea, because I was on a brother pill when I said it. I was like, black men and black women have two different political agendas. And that is the crux of this quote unquote gender politics, because the same thing that's talked about earlier with Jamil Hill, talking about, black men have no interest in tearing down the patriarchy. Oh man, I hate when I drop stuff. Aubrey, what's happening? Give me 1 second. When you say black men are not on board with tearing down the patriarchy, what does that do for black men? Because it's gender politics. Black men aren't looking at America in a gender politics sense. We're looking at America in a political sense of what's good for us as a whole. What's up, Chaos? Oh man, I'm gonna put that up. So I'm gonna put that up. So Prometheus, yo, you good? So that's a whole nother thing that's involved with it. Well, we're dealing with the concept of gender politics, and the reason why I say it's gender politics is because men look at it differently. What's benefiting the community? Because you can't say you're being pro-black if you're being pro-black man. This is where it becomes an issue, because it becomes a hustle. Because if you say, hey, you know what, my political stance is pro-black man, pro-black male, what's up? Now, we don't necessarily have a political agenda like that, but that becomes the issue. Absolutely, Jeremiah, absolutely. Nine, what's happening? So now we're looking at politics in the sense of, okay, black men are looking at politics. What have we received politically, right? And what have the women received? Now you could say the women have taken advantage of whatever political programs or entitlement programs that are set there for women, black people, or minorities, or people of color, however you want to look at it. The men are looking at it like there are men who've benefited off of that. But if you talk to some of the men, you might come to find that those men also have had trouble dealing with other groups who weren't black men in particular, making sure that it was extra hard for them to get or give them some type of pushback to benefit off of the programs politically there. So this becomes an issue, and not just in policy, but in politics. I was listening to Dinus Amir's channel maybe 2 days ago. He had a sister on there. They're talking about male-female relationships. And she said she was divorced. You got alimony, this, that, and the third. But what was very striking was something that she said, you know what, I'm going to save that. Well, I'm going to get into the next part. Actually, I'm going to get into the next part, which is family courts. Family courts, is a pro-black. It's one of the top 10 pro-black hustles. And I'm going to tell you why. When people say that they're pro-black, if you have family court issues, you're not pro-black. The reason why I say that is because you can't on one end say you pro-black community, and at the same time we have family court is hovering over our heads. You can't be pro-black with the government. Forget being in your business life, but in your family, personal life. So you have this whole dynamic of we gonna be pro-black, we all together. No, we not. No, we not. If you paying child support, every 2 weeks or every month, or you receiving child support every 2 weeks, every month, that's not pro-black. But it's a hustle. We got to fight the system. The system is oppressing us. If you're using that same system to make sure, I'm just trying to take care of these kids. The fact that a lot of these kids are still not being taken care of, even after this whole family court system has been introduced into the family dynamic, says you're not pro-black. Okay? Because this idea that, these guys are deadbeats, they run away, they leave the home, they leave us, they abandon us, they leave us stranded. This is not pro-black. Because Bernard Riley said something earlier about if you are in a house, if you're in a single household and you're the head, if you're a single parent and you're the head of household, then of course, you're not in the same, and of course you're not in the same home as the person you made the baby with. You made a child, you created a child with. So this idea that I'm abandoned, you could leave a person and then still say you abandoned them. Like what I mean by this, when I was a kid, 80s, I see this happen in the 90s, not so much in the 2000s, a little bit. I don't know if it's like that now, so I'm not going to just speculate that it's like that right now because I'm not too sure. That's why I just said 2000, not 2010s, because it's 20 now, so I will go from 10 to 19, so 11 to 19. But you could a mother could pick up a kid and just leave the city or state with that kid, and years later turn around and said I got abandoned. But we pro-black because when a black man gets killed, in a racial incident, I marched. That's not pro-black. If you went and marched and protested because you saw something happen predominantly to black men that's racial injustice, but what's your kid's relationship with their father? And did you drive a wedge between that relationship? Because a lot of people do the march, but they're not gonna say, you know what, I marched this way to get my child away from their father who wasn't a detriment to their lives. So family court is a pro-black hustle because what I'm saying is you can say on one minute you pro-black, but you're using the government to get a check from a black man, and at the same time, there is little real family dynamic. So it becomes very, very problematic. Very, very problematic. I got you on that, Tony. Oh, who? Oh boy. That's a whole nother thing, fam. Oh, that's a whole nother thing. And you're right about it. You're right about it. Now, the other thing that strikes me when I was talking about the male-female agenda. For the longest, men didn't have agendas. And one of the pro-black hustles that men do, it's not just the black woman is God hustle. It's also this hustle that black men need to step up and protect and provide. And I'm gonna tell you why it's a pro-black hustle, because the guys speaking that are guys who are viewed as guys who were formerly a detriment to the black community. So your former criminals straightened up, and now they want the black community, the black men, to protect and provide for the women, because the black woman is a queen, the black woman is God. And it's like, wait, this is a hustle, man, because in one aspect, you're berating the men to fix things that, in a sense, the bad apples messed up that they didn't come back to fix in the first place. And on the second, it's a hustle because if you can get the women on board, they're willing to open up their purse and give you some money. So, because the black community, you would say, is lacking, quote unquote, the black community, as in when I say areas, neighborhoods that are predominantly black, it's the assumption is it's old people and single mother households. So the men in those communities are looked at as guys who, even the single guys, are guys who were screw ups in their younger years, and now they're relegated to the very neighborhoods that they destroyed, you know. So the agenda winds up being a problem, you know. Yeah, definitely, Prometheus, definitely. So the gender issue becomes, the agenda of the gender becomes a problem. And I'm like, you know, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is this. Now you're looking at the ramifications of a lot of people making a lot of bad decisions, being young and dumb or just selfish. And now their agenda is to appeal to the same people that they once used in the past, because they figured out, you know, their nature. So this is how I can get money out you. Now, what I mean by that, the agenda, as far as as with the guys, is the male agenda seems to say that the men will never be any good, you know, and because using the men who are screw ups as a muse for, this is why you shouldn't trust or believe in black men. Because see this guy right here, he was a total screw up. And because he was a total screw up, you know, it's put him in a position to relegate his life to be on this trajectory that is probably not as upwardly mobile. Okay. This is what black men are. It's like, well, no, because what you come to find out is when you're meeting guys who don't fit that negative narrative or negative stereotype, as in a guy who's incompetent. When you start meeting these competent men, guess what winds up happening? That becomes a culture shock. And this is what I mean by it's a hustle, because people are looking at competent black men as anomalies. Now you can see them over and over and over and over again, but they're an anomaly. So guess what? When something happens, guess what we doing? These guys are, you know, he just, you know, he got his stuff together for now. Eventually, he gonna mess it up. Savage, what's popping? You know, and what's going on? Absolutely, I feel it. I feel it, Aunt. You know, I can't wait either. So we're gonna play this game where the black woman is God or she's a queen, and the black man could never necessarily be a king until he fixes all of America in one, you know, great swoop. That's a sneak attack that everybody doesn't see type of ideology. And because you set a framework for this is the only way black men are going to be respected in the country, and at the same time the women are queens and gods the whole time, it becomes a hustle because you have people thinking very delusional. Very delusional. Oh, I see Umar. Yeah, I mean he's fought. He's used it and been a victim of it. He's used it and been a victim of it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, the anomaly isn't the rule, right? Absolutely, huh? So this becomes problematic. Now, the next thing, it's a hustle. One of the top 10 pro-black hustles is disrespectful conversations. See, what I alluded to at the end of what I just talked about with the male-female agenda is when black men don't save the world in one fell swoop, we have these disrespectful conversations. Now, when I was watching the Fox Soul thing with Ice Cube, same thing when I was watching Ice Cube on Roland Martin. You see these disrespectful conversations, and people, use it as being pro-black because it comes from this point of anger, animosity, angst, that whatever a black man is saying, about to say, has a certain amount of, is met with a certain amount of disrespect. Let me cut you off. When you speak, what's going on, Ms. Muhammad? When you speak, let me ignore what you just said and interject what I want into what you just said and make a whole narrative about something that you didn't say. And now you have to go right back and say, didn't I just say? I just said this, this, and this. This meant this, this, and this. And what was interesting, when Ice Cube was talking about the contract with Black America, one of the ladies said, well, it's nothing in there for women. And Ice Cube was like, the contract with Black America is for Black people. Like, aren't Black women Black people? But they wanted something specific, right? So it raises an eyebrow, but then later on he was like, listen, if you want something, why don't you ladies come up with something and put it in there in the contract for yourselves? And the ladies were like, they were kind of, at first they was, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And then they were kind of hesitant to doing it because it's problematic. Rastas, what's going on? Cynical, what's popping? And what I noticed about it was, see, the hustle is no matter how big, how successful, how big of a platform, how great an idea that a Black man has, if it ain't Black woman first, it ain't pro-Black. Or if it ain't a section for a Black woman in particular, it ain't pro-Black. And the question has to be, since that's the case, guys are going to start saying, you know what? We wanted something for Black people specifically as a group, but now since we're going to do this specifically individual thing, this is what I want specifically for Black men. This is what I want specifically for Black women. And see, that's going to cause a whole uproar in itself because the women wanted something specifically for them. And you can tell there's going to be a visceral response to when the men say, you know what, this is what we want specifically for the Black men. Because what the women want specifically for them has nothing to do with us. That's for them, it's a unique issue. So they're a unique group. We also have unique issues because we're a unique group. And why I'm saying it's a top 10 pro-Black hustle as far as disrespectful conversations, because what winds up happening is these disrespectful conversations derail our progress as Black people. So when somebody's making a positive stride forward, what happens is there's a disrespectful conversation. You know what I'm saying? There's a disrespectful conversation that derails the forward progress, and now becomes either a gender war or a how can I say this? A smokescreen to diminish what's been put on the table. Oh yeah. Hold up, Rosters. I got you. Hold on, fam. Hold up. My bad, bro. Let me see. All right, Rosters, done. Now, and that's what Tony said. We got to move in silence, which is interesting, right? Interesting. So once we had these conversations and they so disrespectful, we go nowhere. But why the other reason why it's a hustle, because when I talked earlier about intersectionality, the men are going nowhere, but the women are, what, Ted? I hate your guts. I saw that little clip you said, this is why he'd go to the ocean and L.A.R. I don't have nothing you got to say. But you know what? Salute to King James. I'll give you that. They did win. But part of the conversations is when the conversations get disrespectful and it derails our progress as Black people, we don't take into consideration some of the women involved with that are still under the I'm a double minority card. They're still under I'm with people of color. They're still under I'm getting my alphabet on. They're still under their whole brand of intersectionality. So if the disrespectful conversations derail a Black agenda for a Black community, it doesn't necessarily derail their agenda, because they're trying to come up on that other end. Calvin, thanks, fam. Selling hotep. Appreciate it. So this becomes a pro-Black hustle. You say that's pro-Black. Yeah, I got to get that. I got to get that spray. That when you get your fade, it cools you off. After you smack you with that alcohol, got to get that green alcohol. Hotep. Now, the other thing that's important about this part is that's what I'm saying, top 10 pro-Black hustles. The other one is gentrification. See, that's a pro-Black hustle. Gentrification has become a pro-Black hustle because you can only gentrify a neighborhood that's stagnant or that's regressing, right? So when people talk about, the hood, it's the small things that start to add up in the hood. And what I mean by that is the hood isn't well maintained to the point that other people could come along and land grab. Devontae, what's popping? Lees, what's going on? So now, what winds up happening is, we need to stop this gentrifying the community. Well, you can't stop the gentrifying the community if you can't stop. It's not necessarily the crime. It's not the drugs in the community. It's the gunfire that needs to stop. You know what I'm saying? Because all communities across the board have a criminal element. They all have drugs and prostitution. But what they lack is gunfire. You get what I'm saying? They all have a segment of just outlaw, rebellious people. But they have less casualties that are self-inflicted. Like near my home, They do a lot of drag racing at night. They've been drag racing for years at night. The cops know that they drag racing at night all the time. But see, what you don't get is a bunch of car crashes killing people. Because if you had car crashes killing people, then guess what? That'd have to shut that down. You know what I'm saying? Thanks, Joshua, for not having access to. Right. It's a catch-22. I definitely get it. But that's the other thing about the gentrification, because the black church that's in the black community doesn't complain about gentrification, if you notice. And why is that? Because the black church for years have invested in properties in the black community, which the vast majority of its members come from. So if you got a black church on a particular corner and all the members are from the neighborhood, that black church is going to take some of that tithe and offering money and start buying real estate in that black neighborhood. So if it's time to gentrify, they're going to be renting out property to members or non-members with that money. So if it's time to sell, they could buy something for $50,000, rent it out for years, and when the neighborhood gets gentrified and the price goes to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, they can sell that, and they've made a gangs of profit on top of profit for years. But the congregation itself still remains in poverty. Michael, what's happening? No, some in poverty, some not in poverty. But gentrification is a pro-black hustle, because also with the family dynamic, what you're seeing is with the split of the black family, so many single parent households, a lot of single mothers and a lot of single fathers wind up either maybe participating in home ownership, but not necessarily owning a home at the end of the day, because of all of the ups and downs of the family court, child support, alimony, divorce system. Because the women don't wind up owning the homes, they wind up downgrading until they're old and wind up in an apartment. And the men wind up, by the time they can actually afford buying a home, being so old that they can't necessarily pay the house off by the time they die. You get what I'm saying? So that's a prime reason for gentrification. A prime aspect of why gentrification is so prevalent, and why I say it's a pro-black is one of the pro-black hustles. Because if you don't have any family property, you don't have much, and on top of that, because the neighborhoods are like that, people are trying to get out of the hood. So guess what? They're not buying. People talk about buy back the block, and I'm glad. Normally the guys who talk about buy back the block are some of the same guys who were, let's see, the D boys who was destroying the block when they were younger. So it is that so them taking the initiative to fix up the community, you got to salute to them for that, because they messed it up. They wanted to fix it. So, but I got to go to number 8, right? So number 8 of the top 10, pro-black hustles would be non-criminal policies. And what I mean by this is, what's up, John? When we talk about being pro-black, and you talk about the men specifically, a lot of criminal act, a lot of because this happened, the crime bill, the guys who got locked up, and we gotta right the guys who got locked up and make them whole. The issue with why I'm saying it's a hustle is because that doesn't involve all of the guys who did not do crime. All the guys who are not criminals or did unethical things in life or in the community. So when you leverage being pro-black as fixing the black men who were incarcerated or in that type of situation, then basically you say the only black men who need help or who need to be who need to be made whole in society are people who were or are criminals, which is in how can I say this? In a general sense, ridiculous. Just ridiculous. So the guys who are family men, they don't need any help. The men who are divorced, they don't need any help. The men who are baby daddies don't need any help. The men who went to school and got student loan debt, they don't need any help. The men who are who just working, whether it's a career or entrepreneur, they don't need any help, right? So you're pro-black by ignoring that's being pro-black by ignoring those type of guys and going straight to guys who have a record, because they're looked at as the people worse off. Jana, what's happening? Which some of those guys are self-inflicted. Those are the guys who criminal guys and political prisoners are two different things. Criminal guys and guys falsely accused and falsely arrested and falsely imprisoned are two different things. You can't put both of those things together and say that's appreciated, that's being pro-black. You get what I'm saying? Because it's not. It's not whatsoever. Hold up, Jeremiah. Yeah, I feel you on that. So that becomes an issue. Now I'm gonna skip forward. This becomes this is a sticking point for me at this particular point. The number 9 top 10 pro-black hustle to me is revisionist history. Revisionist history, because what we're seeing now are adults, some old adults, some young adults, who are making up a narrative about black history that's not true. They're interjecting nuance that didn't exist to make it true. What I mean by that, remember the guy that made the article, "Black Men are the white men of the black community," and that's revisionist history. Using the Madam C.J. Walker story that they put on Netflix, people are going to think that's real. That's revisionist history, because to have this pro-black community thing going, where people are trying to make history not look like history and add something into it that didn't make sense. What's up, Ryan? So same thing with the Harriet Tubman movie, when they had the bigger, longer character that didn't exist in real life. That's revisionist history. Same thing about, you go back to The Color Purple in itself. That's a story it was a movie. It wasn't really real life at that particular juncture. That wasn't how the relationship with black men and black women actually was at that particular point in time. But people made it part of their part of the history, right? And this is what winds up being pro-black. Like the same thing where we don't want our history whitewashed, right? Because there's two things. You know what? I'm gonna say this: if anybody has Hulu, watch this new season of Fargo with Chris Rock, with the blacks and with the Italians. You know, I watched was it the 5th episode last night, and there was a great scene in there because what it says about Fargo when it starts is this is actually a true story, and this is how the story actually happened, or mostly how it happened, but we're not giving people's real names, okay? And the reason I'm saying that is because there was actually a scene in Fargo where the Italians got the black cats locked up, and it was a speech that the Don of the Italian mafia walked in. He walked into prison because the white people let him come to the jail to see the black guys that he got arrested because they was working for the Italians. And he said, "Listen, in this country, you know, people praise the person who goes out and takes what they want. People who take, but you know what? They don't. Well, you can't take what you want. You're the only person in this country that can't go out and take what you want." And people say, "Is that revisionist history?" And when you look at history, no, it's not really, because these other groups use crime to get ahead in life. When it's like, you know, when they look at us, they see people committing crime to get ahead. When they look at y'all committing crime, they just look at crime. So now it acts like, you know, it's like we have no rhyme or reason, right? But they knew it was a rhyme or reason, but using that as a reference, rather. But when it comes to these other stories about black men and black history, you start forgetting things. You know, you start forgetting things. You start forgetting how 6ix9ine was popping. You know, you start forgetting how history actually works. You know, Martin Luther King was cheating on Coretta. That's, you know, revisionist history. Malcolm X was homosexual at some point. Revisionist history. You know what I'm saying? When it came to even Bill Cosby, oh, Bill Cosby was drugging people. Y'all don't realize people was taking Quaaludes at all kinds of parties in the 60s and 70s. You know, cocaine more so in the 80s. You don't. That's you're making revisionist history, but we're gonna be pro-black off of revisionist history. You get what I'm saying? That's gonna be the problem. And the reason why I'm saying revisionist history is because what we're having is generations of people who are having animosity towards their own people for things that actually didn't exist. So it's a pro-black hustle to create a narrative. This is why I'm acting like this, because in the past people did that. But when you go back and look at the past, people actually didn't do that. So now your actions aren't valid. Thus, we have an issue, you know, and we're trying to be pro-black because we're under this, that, and the third. Like, when other groups come to this country and they act like civil rights wasn't how they actually were able to come to this country, and that's revisionist history. When you have, but when black people say, no, the reason why you're here is this. No, it's not. It's because of, okay, fine. Don't worry about it. So now you revise the history. Now you got here on your own merit, when that's not true. Somebody had to set the table for you to come in the first place. Now, what I mean by being a pro-black, one of the things I actually mean by this being a pro-black hustle is people use the revisionist history as a way to get over on us as black people. So now I can come in with an agenda, and all I have to do is play to your version of revisionist history, so it makes you feel good. So now you can go out and be somebody else's foot soldier, whether they're skin folk or kin folk or neither. And now you're going to move on somebody else's agenda, not taking into consideration that, they're like, is because of we being black and black power and this, that, and the third. The same thing goes for when these other groups get involved, like when people are bringing up Antifa and this, that, and the third, right? Or you get white people who are like, you remember what black people did white people did to black people back in the day? That's revisionist history, because you're acting as though some of those things aren't happening today when they are. You want to say all these things happened back in the day were an injustice, but in the current day, let's ignore those injustices at that day. Interesting. It becomes very interesting over a period of time. Now, yeah, I got you. What's up, Patrick? So the last thing I got to say about this is, the top 10, 10 pro-black hustlers is hope and slow change. One of the things that Ice Cube pointed out very eloquently, very brilliantly, was politically our issues are a bipartisan issue. So that means Democrats, Republicans, you can independent, Green Party, Libertarian, whatever you want. It's a bipartisan issue. Both people gotta have to be addressed when it comes to that. Disky, what's popping? So since both parties have to be addressed, people keep selling us hope and slow change. Hope and slow change. Hopefully it's gonna get better, and we just got to make this little. If you could just wait on me, take this little bitty step. If you take these little bit, we made a lot of progress, but we got a long way to go. Let me explain something to you. When you say somebody made a lot of progress and they got a long way to go, here's the question: how far do you have to go? See, nobody have said this is how far we've come, but how far do we have to go? And that's why I say it's a pro-black hustle, because if the finish line is ambiguous, to say the least, or the finish line keeps moving, or the finish line is somewhere in perpetuity, then it's a hustle. Because we can't say, okay, how about this? From 2010 to 2030, this is our finish line. From 2030 to 2040, this is our finish line. If we're going to do it like that, let's do it like that. But see, the hustle is you pro-black, but there is no end goal, no end game. Oh, okay, this is what we need to do. This is where we need to be by this particular juncture. Because everybody else has an end game. So if we don't have one, it's just a hustle. It's just a, back and forth conversation that really has no weight, no depth to it. And you come to find out these things after a while, it's like, And this is why people are tripping. Well, Ice Cube said that the Republicans said they could earmark money. And he's like, yeah, that's what they said. Democrats said, wait until after the election. Why? I said this in a video that I put out, because I did all my videos this morning. I just scheduled them during the day. But one of the last ones about patriarchy, I think it was a politics. The Congressional Black Caucus, if you look up the people in the Congressional Black Caucus, they're all Democrats. So how can they get anything done on a bipartisan issue when the Congressional Black Caucus has no, you get what I'm saying? No Black Republicans. The Congressional Black Caucus would need somebody like a Michael Steele. They would, to get a bipartisan issue handled. That becomes, that's synonymous with having all your eggs in one basket. Because if you're the Black Caucus, that should have everybody in it, not just a particular group. Right? Hustle economics, yeah, definitely appreciate that, Patrick. So yeah, benchmark goals. So we're dealing with this hope and slow change. But nobody wants to say, because the women are saying we want more money. I don't think us as men, we're not looking at our community as a financial issue at the moment, because what use is us making more money when the community is all over the place giving it to everybody else? That's just my take on it. And how can I say this? And in some ways, using money as a reference, I'm trying to say this in the right way, so just give me a second to get it together. Black men are looking at money in a sense of, numbers, dollars, and cents, as in, what is our financial number to get out of this situation? Because O'Shea's talked about this, a lot of brothers talk about this, a lot of women have talked about this. We have a $1.6 trillion economy, right, and spending power in America. And now you would say that's pretty big, and I get it, it is. But here's the thing: we are 13% of the population in America. 13. We're going to say we're 13%. The GDP is over $20 trillion. So if we have a $1.6 trillion spending power or buying power, we haven't taken into consideration that's not even 10% of the GDP. So we didn't even get to 13, 14, or 15% of the GDP of the spending power of this country. So we're not getting our financial representation as a group in this country. And you can say the same thing about Hispanics. You probably could say the same thing about Asians, because I think Hispanics have a $1.8 trillion to maybe $2 trillion spending power at this particular point. And I think they're somewhere between 16 to 20% of the population now. And they're still not at, 10 to 20% of their population, So this becomes an issue. So, but we go on with this, if we keep riding this hope, something gonna change. No, it's not. No, because things can't change for us until we get our emotional spending in check. And we can't get our emotional spending in check because we're so separated as far as men and women when it comes to the Black community. We're separated. So it's not just our children are separated, our finances are separated, our genders are separated, our ability for home ownership is separated, our ability for legacy is separated, our ability to make the best out of the school system is separated. You know what I'm saying? Our voting patterns are separated. So, and the irony of all this comes up is, all of this just magically now, quote unquote, magically pops up a few weeks before the election. This has existed for a long time. Because I referenced this earlier, the Democratic Party knew they had a problem on their hands when they lost the election last time, because white women voted predominantly for President Trump. So now you're going to move forward 4 years later, and you're just going to ignore the elephant in the room that, could you get the white women to vote Democratic this time? Could you get them to vote this? Probably not. But if we get the Black men on board at the last minute, we could just turn it around. And, and what I was talking about with Ice Cube, when he said he talked to the Democrats and they gave him the hope and slow change thing, because they didn't talk to him about actually getting anything done. So it became a pro-black hustle because, you know, if you keep riding with us, we're going to do something for you. Because I'm not just saying we hustle ourselves in the community. I'm saying other communities hustle us too. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes a problem. You know, so I'm going to leave it at that. I've been on here for an hour. Thank y'all for rocking with me. I appreciate y'all. I got some other things to do. God bless y'all. God bless America. Now, peace. I almost hit the leave button. I done this twice already. Take care.